I appreciate this conversation. It has nothing to do with anything that we talk about, but people say all the time, like, who's your favorite kid? I'm like, well, ask me, on what day. They were growing up. Sometimes I liked that one and I did not like that one. And then, it always shifted. So, it's very difficult. You just can't pick a favorite kid, but it's just like, it's day by day assessment.
It's
I
true.
feel that.
I
I
think
feel that.
there's a leadership lesson there, KZ. I really
Yeah.
think Hollow Bunny stuff right
You,
here.
you know,
I
you are
was
so
confronted one
right.
time as a chief, and somebody said, "Hey, I was told you play favorites," and I said, "Hell yeah, I do. I favor people with positive attitudes that want to learn, that take initiative, that really give a shit. Of course, I play favorites, and favorites are different with every interaction, with every project, with every call for service. It's like you're my favorite in this moment, right?"
Yes, exactly. And not only that, but the other leadership lesson there is, about, treating people exactly the same. And that's not possible when it comes to humans,
Yep.
and especially when you look at, your kids and if you can, use that as a parallel, like I could look at my daughter and to discipline her and she would just start crying. All I would have to do is look at her, and my son, totally different. So same with, with all of us. We're all different human beings.
The Hollow Bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast.
Welcome.
Welcome. I am Kristen Zeman, and I am here with my co-host, the very full bunny, Sylvia Moyer. We are both former police chiefs, but as y'all know, this Hollow Bunny podcast is not just for cops. It's for anyone who has an interest in talking about life and leadership, and particularly the lessons that we have learned about both. And those lessons that we have learned fill up our hollow bunnies, metaphorically, of course. But we are getting close to Easter. So maybe we could just go with literal hollow bunnies, solid,
I don't
whatever.
know. Right. There's people are going to listen to this podcast. They're going to listen to this and they're going to see hollow bunnies everywhere. It's going to
Yeah.
bring them right back here, Kristen. They're going to tune in. They're going to say, "Okay, I need to fill my bunny." They're going to be
Yeah.
reminded through this season of this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, you and I were just in LA. We were talking to the Los Angeles Women's Police Officers Association. And wow, that was really cool to be on stage together.
Woo!
And yes, the energy was so palpable. Amazing. 800 women attended that conference.
And dudes,
Amazing. And
sprinkling
dudes,
dudes,
a
sprinkling,
sprinkling.
a
Uh-huh.
sprinkling of dudes. It was fantastic.
Sprinkles. Yes, sprinkles of men were there and they were absolutely wonderful. And, we talked about being in the driver's seat of our own careers. And then that made us think about how you and I obviously are Thelma and Louise.
True.
Um,
Without
so
driving off the cliff. Yes.
so I admit I didn't think that through. Yeah, we photoshopped our faces as Thelma and Louise on the introductory slide, and
Mhm.
it didn't occur to me that Thelma and Louise drove off the cliff together. So, yeah, didn't think that through.
Yeah, but it was powerful for this people who were old enough to remember the damn movie too.
Yeah, that was the other epiphany. Man, talk about fails on so many levels. Number one, they drove off a cliff.
Right.
Number two, I forget that, we're of the older generation persuasion, the more seasoned is, if you will, in our fifth decade, and the younger individuals in the audience there have no idea who Thelma and Louise is. So I'll call that an epic fail.
It wasn't an epic fail. It was a slight little ta-ting, ta-dun-dun. Like, okay,
Okay.
moving
Yeah.
on. And
Yeah.
then we brought it. I think there are several things we want to talk about. So
Yes.
for all of our listeners, in the coming weeks, we're going to have some really cool guests that you'll want to tune in for, right, Kristen? Let's not tell them who they are, but we're going to have some super guests that are going to churn on some things. bite into some things and provide you with some stuff to really think about, marinate on, chew on, whatever, however you want to say it. So we're also going to talk briefly about what is it like when you bring the two of us to the stage together. Uh, and a few things that we talked about. You're going to just really dive into one. I'm going to dive into one, and then we're going to have some convo.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
for those people that weren't there, because it was a really great time to get some people nudged into some thinking about some things and taking some action on their own behalf. For those of you that weren't there, we'll give you a light look into some things that we kind of highlighted. How's that
Yeah,
sound?
I think that sounds great. And sharing the stage with you was amazing. And I delving right in, we looked at the theme of the conference, which is Own Your Tomorrow. And I
Ooh,
love that so much. It resonated with both of us. And that's really what prompted us to think about which quite frankly is the number one thing people ask me, is, what can I do in my career to help me, move forward? And I always say, you are responsible for your own career. You are in the driver's seat of your own career. And that's how we kicked it off, was about personal choice. And I think sometimes we get into the mindset of, let's just call it what it is. It's victimization, where we are a victim of things that maybe have happened to us, whether they are fair or not, or maybe perceived to be by us in our careers. Maybe we didn't get that position we put in for. Maybe we were overlooked for the promotion. You name it, something that happened to us, right, in a negative way. And we recognize that we have a choice in how we show up and how we deal with perhaps that roadblock or that failure. And that to me is the greatest of human freedoms. And have talked so much in the past on this podcast about Viktor Frankl, and the greatest of human freedoms is to choose our responses in any situation, and it is in that response lies our growth and freedom. And that's how we kicked it off, is that we don't have to live in that learned helplessness, is that even if something bad has happened, we can look at it and we can say, okay, good, right? I didn't get that thing. I failed here. So what does that mean? That means I've got to drill down deeper inside of me, and I've got to do better next time. And so that was a great place to kick it off about learned helplessness. And
sure,
learning and training are your own responsibility, right? That's why you're in the driver's seat, right, Thelma?
sure. You bet, Louise. I don't even know which one's which, but
I don't either.
okay, but you were the one driving. Pow. Here's the deal with that. Some of our listeners are going to say, okay, so I've had some setbacks, I've had some failures. And what we're saying is we have an opportunity to shift between stimulus and responsialized choice, right? And the victimization is this churning kind of cesspool of doom that will bring you down. What we're arguing is that, and offering for consideration, is that we too have been there. We too have failed. Our approach, my approach early on, was to have a full pity party. Poor me, this sucks, throw my sucker in the dirt, stomp off the playground. Everything's terrible. And it lasted for a few days. And
Mhm.
then, as my failures became innumerable, over and over and over, as I sucked at something, as something didn't go as planned, as I didn't achieve what I decided wanted to achieve, they became more brief. And then I created an adaptation to the failure. And we've talked about that. You always, the coolest thing that you say, well, you say millions of cool things, but I'll take in my top 10 of cool Kristen Zeman sayings that are actionable is I want to suck at something new. So you have approached the grit, the courage, the just trying something in a way that's like, hey, I might suck at this, but I'm going to dive in and see what I could do about it. Here's the big things that came out of it. We can, in our own failures, do something so we are not victims. It is fuel for us. And then as leaders, how do we get our folks that are in our sphere of influence to recognize failures as fuel as well?
Yeah, that's right. And that they're action items. These aren't just words. There are action items to that we can truly drive change forward in our own careers. And those action items are taking responsibility for your own learning and your own training. I know that you have had times where you were denied training and you paid for it on your own dime to go.
Yep,
And it doesn't even have to be
yep.
like that. You can still pick up a book and a podcast, listen to a leadership podcast, do something that adds to your learning and your training, because that is your responsibility. And the one thing that I have learned is the more that you build your skills and your competency, is the more that they can't ignore you. And that's where you come to a certain place in time. And now that is not competition against anyone else. That probably, if I had to give one piece of advice to anyone listening in the world who's trying to achieve something, I would say, don't compete against other people. And yet that's our nature, is the competition. We see a position, there are other people vying for it. And so we automatically go into that competitive nature when that doesn't serve us well. And there is just such a great story, of
Yeah.
Olympians that are headed towards the goal, and they're looking forward and not looking at their competition on either side of them. And that's the
Hmm.
point here, and so you build your skill, your competency, and you become better. This version of you right now, your circa 2023 self, the 2024 versions should be better. So there's the competition. And then once you start doing that and collecting, training and competency and the skills and ability, you're gonna be so good that they can't ignore you.
Listen, Hollow Bunny podcasters, I think our producer, the very sexy and talented Ted Madden, just fell on the floor because this just happened. Did you notice that Kristen Zeman just made a sports analogy?
Oh,
Anyone?
write that down.
Anyone? There he is, everyone.
We'll
If
mark
you're
it.
watching this, you get to see that face. Huh? All you have to do is subscribe and like to see
You
that.
know what? What's nice here is I've got the option, because I edit this, to cut all of this out.
He's got the ultimate power.
You savage man. Our people need you. So clip Ted is going to that. Okay, so here's the deal. What you offered is something super amazing. Two things from my mama that are leadership lessons. One is she quoted Theodore Roosevelt, who said, comparison is the thief of joy,
Mm,
right? And you're talking about competition. I also think comparison has to be considered in this. So for
great.
leaders, for people that are trying to fill their bunny, think about this. Comparison is the thief of joy. And what comes up for you as you consider that? To compare myself with Kristen Zeman would
Mm,
be an act of futility. Why would I do that? She has incredible strengths, incredible gifts that I don't have. And that would imprint on me then, perhaps, to feel less than. But
mm.
no, I say, you go fly your freaky flag. You go do you the way you do it, because you are perfect and amazing just as you are. I'll never be you, but I'm not going to compare. I'm going to be lifted up and synchronized with what makes you amazing, right?
Well,
So that's
yeah.
another.
And
And
you know what? I'm going to grab the leadership lesson out of that as well. And I appreciate your kind words. And here is what I would say to that, is that every single one of us has unique skills and ability. And so the idea for me and building a leadership team, building people around you,
yes,
that it's a mosaic, right? You have so many different skills and talents that I have, and all of the people that we choose to surround ourselves with should have different skills and abilities. And then you put us all together, and that mosaic turns into such a beautiful picture. But the problem what we really have to fight is that innate, it's innate in us to want to bring people around us that think like us. And that is a problem. If you want to elevate your leadership, if you want to elevate your organization, the key is to bring people in that think differently than you do, that make you think about your own position, right? That's how
sure.
you elevate an organization, not by just, mimicking, your own likeness and, yes men, right?
Yeah, that's one of the ways. And think about this, in the hallway at the Los Angeles Women's Peace Officers Association conference, a woman grabbed me and said, what you and Chief Zeman just talked about resonated with me in the way that I have some of my mentors telling me I need to dress a certain way, and not in the way she was describing to elevate one's kind of presence, right? Because I think there's room for us to say, let's elevate our presence and perhaps, zhuzh it up. I don't know. She was being told, don't wear certain colors, don't wear this, don't wear that. And it was her natural self. She was wearing this beautiful green blouse with a suit. And let me just say, LAPD, man, those people dress up for training. What?
Yeah. Can we
Atlanta,
talk about how pretty they are? Yeah.
like, to the pretty people. And
Man.
pretty in all kinds of senses, right? So
Yeah.
she said she's really grappled with that, to be something she's not, to be different. And the encouragement for her was, don't compare yourself with other people. You
Mm.
experience your own joy. Is what you're wearing, does it make you feel like a badass woman able to do anything? Yes. Is it genuinely you? Yes. Is it professional in the environment? Yes. Then what's up? So the encouragement was, you do you, and don't
Right.
compare yourself with the others. If it checks those boxes that we just talked about, then do it, right?
Right. Yeah, but think about how much feedback we get from people in our profession that say, I perhaps tried too hard to fit in,
Yeah.
into this environment, into what I thought I was supposed to be. And to me, that's the other major lesson that I have extrapolated throughout my 30-year career, and where I went wrong were all those times that I lost myself because I was too busy trying to fit in. And it's Brene Brown, the author and social scientist, that tells us that fitting in is about assessing a situation to become who you need to be in order to be accepted. But
Whereas,
whereas belonging, which is what we should strive for, belonging does not require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. And man, that is such a remedial lesson that I have had to revisit throughout my entire career.
and why didn't we hear that before? Where was Brene Brown when we were
Where
little
has she
young
been?
officers? I'm going to talk to her when she comes on our podcast. I'm going to say, really, girl, come on. So, listeners, rewind that. Go back and listen to that. Fitting in versus belonging. That
Mm,
has to be illuminated, highlighted, underscored. It has to be something that you consider in your leadership journey. The
yeah.
distinction between fitting in and belonging.
Yes, and you know what? It's not just for your career either.
Yep.
It's at the end of your one wild and precious life, right? And there was an Ivy League study that has actually been going on for over 70
Look at
years.
you bringing up Ivy League. Go.
I like to bring up the Ivy League data. And in this study, they have interviewed those at the end of their lives, at the very end of their lives, on their deathbed, and they asked them one question: what would you do differently? And we hear this all the time, right? People would say, I wouldn't work as much and all of that. But this was the number one thing across the board people said. Are you ready? They
I
said,
am ready.
they said, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. And
Word.
so that is a challenge to everyone listening, our millions of listeners. At the end of your one wild and precious life, were you true to yourself and not to what others expected of you? But no, that's the problem. We all live into other people's expectations of us, right?
Personal life and professional life. And some of us have seen firsthand people that become, or they have the courage to then embrace who they truly are. And
Mm,
there's some fallout from that because they're
mm,
speaking their truth, right?
yeah. Mm.
And their expectations of them by society, by the relationships that they have. And really, we got to step up and be who we genuinely are. It liberates our soul in many ways, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned at the onset, one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who said it because I'd love to find out to give attribution, but you could be the ripest, juiciest apple, and there will be someone who doesn't like apples. And that's okay, but it speaks to that authenticity. But we're so busy trying to figure out, why don't you like my apple? Why don't you like my supple apple? And gosh, man, there are going to be people that you don't care for. And this really kind of pivots into something that you and I talk about a lot because we have a book that we share in common that I know that I use it as my spiritual Bible. But you probably don't even know this, Sil, but I put up on Instagram the photo of you and I speaking on stage. And whenever you put something out into the social media world, there's going to be someone who sits behind, a keyboard and just says something
I think
terribly
that.
nasty.
I think that.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because when I was chief and, I would put things out, it was my chief Facebook page. And now that I'm out of policing, I don't have to tolerate people coming, and spewing garbage onto my page. But someone said something, horrible. And of course it was, under the guise of anonymity, and said something to the effect of, you and we haven't done anything, and I laughed,
It
because
was
I
good.
naturally, but you know what's so funny out of all of the comments, right? Like such kind comments that people
You
come
remember that?
into. That's the one. And I'm thinking, and I start to get defensive where I wanted to say, well, maybe should we match our resumes? I start to get into this, like, this, this, we're a defensive mode. And then I stop and I laugh. And it's about, someone sitting on the sidelines doing nothing of value. And I would bet that they wouldn't get up on a stage in front of 800 people. I don't even know who they are, but you know what I got to do? I got to delete and block. And do you know, like, that's empowered. It's like, I don't need you to come into my stratosphere and
Yeah.
spew your negativity. But I bring that story up, and like I told you, I hadn't even mentioned it to you because it took a little bit of my energy for a moment, and then I laughed, right? But it's a quote by Yogi. Is it Bahan? I don't know how to say the last name. If you are willing to look at another person's behavior towards you as a reflection of the state of their relationship with themselves rather than a statement about your value as a person, then you will, over a period of time, cease to react at all. And I'll tell you, I had a moment in there where I forgot this. This is what I've been practicing, and there was a moment where I was like, "Come at me, bro," and then I remembered this. But what a
You got
reminder!
his mom's basement. Put on
It's
pants.
totally,
Put
yeah.
on trousers.
Yeah, totally. But the book that we share on our spiritual guide, which is I say spiritual not in a religious way, but the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And
Is go girl.
no, what is the thing? What is the thing
Don't take
that
things personally. Be
don't
impeccable with
that's
your
right.
word.
Yep. Don't
Huh?
make assumptions.
Assumptions and do your best every day.
Always do your best. Those four agreements. So if you have not picked up this book, you know what's so interesting about this book is that when the student is ready, the master appears. And I can read this book and maybe don't take anything personally will resonate with me at that time. I can read it again 3 months later and always do your best resonates with me because maybe I'm falling short, right? I'm not challenging myself.
And then we have a moment, and all of a sudden you pick it up and you go, oh, wait, I need to be impeccable with my word. Not
Mhm.
just in terms of my values on full display for people, but be precise with the words that I choose. Right?
Yeah. Yes. And just that, we mentioned this when we were on stage is that words should come out of three gates, should pass three gates, right? Is
They
it
are.
true? Is
Is
it
it
true? Is it kind? And the third one,
is it necessary?
right. So whoever that was that decided to fire off a shitty comment, for first of all, is it true? Hell no. We are all that and a bag of chips.
Is it kind?
Absolutely not. Yeah. And to come on my Instagram feed and insult us, again, it took that moment. It's like I'll ignore all of the wonderful things, that people are uplifting and empowering, and we share that, in our stratospheres and try to, mimic that energy back and forth and give to one another and truly uplift people, not knock them down, right? And instead, I hovered over that comment and got mad until I came right back to what I know is true. true is that this has nothing to do with me, that comment. It has everything to do with them. Don't take anything personally.
Right, and it takes us back a few minutes too. Look, it's this that comment is about that person's struggle with themselves. You take it back and you say, okay, the courage, your Harvard study, or pardon me, I gave attribution to Harvard. It's Ivy League as a broader league of incredibly
I
smart,
said Ivy League because I genuinely can't remember who conducted the study.
super smarty farty people. Let's just
Yes.
say.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they said, what? At the end of your life, to be authentically you. So it takes courage to be authentically you. And those of us that are on the periphery of someone that has that courage, there's a sting and a bite that I don't anymore work for you. Work in terms of like, I don't do it for you, or you
That's
have
right.
found something different, or this is about your struggle with yourself. You want to be authentically you. There's some stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think in the same way that someone comes up and says, look, this is no longer me. My struggle, my authentic self is different than you imagined. And for the receiver of that to feel like there's been a bait and switch, perhaps, is real, but we're not victims in it, right? Kind of tying all this stuff together. And then once we get to a place where we can use your yogi and our yogi, because we found him, right? His statement about this is about your struggle with yourself, not about me, I cease to care at all. And then
Mm-hmm.
I release that person, or we release that person to go find themselves to do their thing.
That's
You
not what I
can't
thought you were going to say.
do what do you
Never mind. Yeah, I thought you were going down another road there, another road. But you know what? It's
like Ickle
no,
Okay, good. Oh, where'd you
no,
go, girl? Now I'm
no.
intrigued. Sort of.
You said something that to really draw out of it as well. And you say this all the time, and I think about risk. The reason that people don't put themselves out there and take
Yeah,
risks are because they are afraid. And I'll tell you what, it's a real fear. They're afraid of that ridicule, of that
sure,
judgment.
sure.
We live with every single one of us. I've talked to men and women who have this imposter syndrome. And when that troll wrote that comment that we've done nothing in our careers, for a small moment, I remember thinking, oh my God, are they right? And then I question,
Mm,
but what that can do is it can paralyze you so you don't put the thing out. You don't put your thought out. You don't put your idea out into the world. You don't stand on the stage and deliver a keynote presentation because you're afraid that some people might not like it. And unless you can take the risk to put yourself out there, you will not be more of yourself. And when you
sure.
start to take those risks, you become more of you. And so you cannot get to that courage without walking through vulnerability. And I think vulnerability is key.
Yep.
And you have to be able to withstand a lot of the trolls that are going to sit on the sidelines, and they're not in the arena with us. They're not standing on stage. They're not, having the nervous stomach before we walk out on stage. And, they're not doing anything of value themselves, and so it's just such an important thing is like, there's the quote about, what is it? So I think, it is about whether if you don't do anything, if you don't want to be criticized, don't do anything. I'm
Don't do
paraphrasing.
anything, don't say anything, don't be anything.
That's right. Yeah. You say that all the time. And that is empowering to hear that is there's going to be people on the sidelines that spew
Yeah,
hate and, that are going to troll you, but you still have to get out there and do the thing. You have to.
absolutely. So, what do you think, Kristen, about us highlighting the key points that we talked about for our listeners? And then we're going to wrap this one up, and then we're going to, in our next episode, we talk about mentors and tormentors. What do you think?
Yeah.
And then
Mentors
our
and
listeners
tormentors.
know that's coming. And then we'll introduce our secret guest. So, what do you think about highlighting the things that we talked about here? The belonging
Versus fitting in, right?
ooh,
Strive to belong, everybody. Strive to belong. You should never have to give up who you are or pretend to be someone else in order to fit in.
yep. We talked about that. We also, of course, brought in Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response lies choice. That's really where our freedom lies.
Yeah.
And we talked about the victimology when bad things happen. We
Mhm.
have there's a natural tendency to feel like a victim, like this happened to me. Maybe this happened to then launch you. So, how do we address how we naturally feel when something bad happens? And sure, there are legitimate victims. We're not saying that. In
Sure.
this leadership space, what we're saying is let's examine what comes up, let's explore that stimulus, and then let's respond in a way that then moves us forward.
For sure. There's going to be things that happen to you and they may in the words of my 10-year-old self, it just may not be fair, right? Sometimes things it's just not fair. And yet if you sit in that and you think about the inequities, you're going to stay there. You're going to stay paralyzed. And I have this visualization of learned helplessness, and that is it's a brick wall and it's put right in front of me in my path. And that
Yeah.
visualization helps me because I think, okay, you know what we can do is sometimes that learned helplessness, we forget that we can walk around the damn wall, right? And if we can't walk around it, then we can climb the wall. And that's where we turn to our tribe, right? And that was the Thelma and Louise moment, is that when I'm standing in front of a wall and I'm not sure how to get over that wall, I'm going to reach out to you because a lot of times you're my co-pilot. You're right there, in the car with me. Yeah. And you
Oh,
can help me up.
through that wall, or what
That's
did
right.
somebody say? If you're gonna walk through hell, walk through like you own the place. I'm like, come on,
Let's
Casey, let's
go.
walk through this wall. Let's go around. Let's dig under. Let's go over. Hell yeah. Ben Horowitz said,
Yeah.
if you're gonna eat shit, don't nibble.
Just
Let's
eat the entire sandwich. Yeah.
let's barrel bite and get through this thing, right?
Yeah, but I really want to emphasize that you don't have to do it alone. There are so many people willing to help
Sure,
you to get over that wall. And I
sure.
think that's where, that vulnerability comes in, to look at our people and say, hey, I need some help here. Help boost me up. So, I think that's the biggest takeaway, and takeaway for me and you in our careers. And I think so many people can learn from some of our failures in these very topics.
And hey, LAPD Women's Association, thank you for having us. We had a total blast. You are incredible people advancing policing and doing the real work, doing the work on behalf of policing and on behalf of our communities. We are better because of your efforts. Thanks for giving us the stage. And when I looked over and saw that, KZ, I felt just empowered, grounded, humbled, but empowered and inspired to continue doing the work on your behalf. So
Absolutely.
that's it for me for this episode of the Hollow Bunny. You want to wrap this thing up, Miss KZ?
I do. What a gift to be able to share our experiences with such amazing women who are out there doing the work. So keep doing what you're doing,
Sprinkling of
everyone.
dudes. Sprinkling of dudes. Don't forget the
That's
sprinkle.
right. Yep. Amazing dudes. So thank you so much for visiting. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe and follow. If you don't, just move along. There's nothing more to see here. This podcast was produced by Ted Madden, and the song you're about to hear is written and performed exclusively for our Hollow Bunny podcast by my handsome and talented son, Jake Zeman, and his accomplished friends, Fabian and Zoe. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you've lost your why? Have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny. When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and you're scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. change the world, you've gotta start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all. And I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger. Failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. If you're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. And we all tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. The monsters are